Hello, everyone. It's the Blether live from Islay and Mike's empty front room. Let me know if you guys can hear and see me okay, everyone, just because I am just solo for a minute. Yeah, if you are watching, pop it in the chat just so I can make sure that I'm not just talking to myself. That would be good. So yeah, I'll just keep talking until I know for sure. Yes, hello, Dave. Thank you very much. Always on the ball with that. So yeah, Mike is actually here. He's just gone to sort something to do with his kids, I think. So I won't be able to get our guest on until Mike gets back, just because I don't have access to that from my side of the chat of the stream. So we'll just have to leave poor Alex in the green room for a little bit. But we've got quite a few people on already, which is good. I'm using somebody else's laptop as well, so I'm not too sure how to scroll up and down. So I'm just going to try and see who we've got that I can see in the small amount of space I've got on the screen. We've got Ed. Nice to see you on. You had friends in Campbellton last week. Oh, here's Mike back. We've got Dave. We've got Dutch Judah. Nice to see you. Oh, is it like that? Okay. I'm getting a wee lesson on how to work this laptop. Oh, there it is. Thank you.
This is mystery hand sneaking in.
Yeah, mystery helper. Come and say hello, mystery helper. So yeah, I was just saying hello to everybody, Mike, while you were away explaining. I wouldn't be able to get the guest on without you because I can't do it from my side. But yeah, for Dave, who said, "Looks like I'm having a blast on Islay this week." I am. I'm having a blast. Feeling the effects of 6 days on Islay, but it's amazing. I've never done Feis before, so it's just been absolutely amazing. Caught up with so many nice people. The weather has been insanely good. Yeah, there's been a lot of good drams. So yeah, slightly hoarse tonight, but and I'm really sunburnt, ridiculously sunburnt, but all good. How are you, Mike?
I mean, not having nearly as much fun as you, really. Although it's been sunny, we've had quite a lot going on at the bar and the shop. My dram tonight is our new exclusive, which launched today. We have this wonderful little dram, which is it's Ski and Whisky. So it's a 15-year-old Burnside, which is the Bletheren and Glenturret teaspoon. Cognac cask finish.
Bit different.
So this is as you can see, it launched today, but I've had a sample before. This isn't just today. I've had a couple of drams, and we actually used it for a tasting last night at a local hotel to get a gauge on that, and it went down. It was the second favourite dram of the night. So yeah, can't complain with that.
No, it's cool. Just for Dutch Judah, there's been a lot of highlights. Probably, I think doing Bruichladdich for the Rock and Dial Festival thing they do afterwards was insane, really, really good. And then popping down to Kalila to do a booth tasting, and then heading down the stairs and finding my favourite band playing live there that I did not know about. Valtos.
Oh, Valtos.
Valtos playing. Yep. So I had no idea they were there, which is very, very cool. But yeah, lots and lots of really good moments. So yeah, all good.
I'm not jealous at all.
I know. Sorry.
No, I've never liked Islay. Never loved to go there. Never liked it at all. I think Feis is overrated and all the whiskey's crap. So
yeah, do you know, I'm actually just having the worst time ever. I'm just like, so boring. Oh, more drams. Oh, more sunshine. Oh, beach drams. Oh, it's over it.
God. More cool people from the whiskey industry. Let's get a selfie. Awesome. Well, talking of cool people in the industry, I think it's time to invite our guest up, I think.
Yeah.
Let's bring in Alex Thomson. Got a full Scottish experience. Hello, Alex. How are you?
Hi, guys. Yeah, not bad. Yourselves?
Good. Good, thank you.
Very, very good. Very good.
Yeah, it sounds like you're having a terrible time, Kat. It's, I know. Not jealous at all.
You were over at Campbellton last week with Ali, right? Ali Heather.
Yeah, I was. That's right. Yeah, so I was very much the plus one to the PR invite, which was it was awesome. So we just total whirlwind thing. We were on I think it was the 8:30 flight out of Glasgow on a little 16-seater down to Campbelltown. Spent the whole day there. Managed to squeeze in something like 4 tastings at Glen Scotia. Plus, it's obviously not very far over to the other 2, so I had to wander over there. And then we were on the 5:30 flight back to Glasgow, so squeezed in a lot in a very short space of time.
He was straight over to Islay because I bumped into him at Kalila because he was comparing the kind of evening over at Kalila, and I bumped into him at Lefroig, as well.
He's a hard-working lad, that one.
Yeah. Well, hard-working. Let's use that. That's what he was doing.
Is that Ali Heather from Historic Ali?
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's good. Like even while even while slightly merry, he still managed to give me the history of the Battle of Harlaw, Mike, with the kind of like Aberdeenshire versus the Isles against Islay. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I've literally got a pint in one hand, a dram in the other, there's live music playing, and you're shouting a history lesson at me. Fully can hear it. It was brilliant.
Doesn't sound like him, no.
More people would be into history if every lesson was like that.
Yeah.
I know, exactly. It was a moment. We've had Ali on the chat before, Alex. So he's a friend, a Bletheren friend, as you are now. But let's find out what's in your glass, and then we need to find out who you are and what you do. What are you dramming tonight?
So I've gone with something that's special for me for a couple of reasons. So as I'll talk about in a little bit, I'm from Perthshire, from just outside Aberfeldy originally, a little village called Grantley. So my local distillery growing up was Aberfeldy Distillery. It was the first distillery I worked at after moving back to the Highlands after uni. So it's a whiskey that's really special to me. The core whiskies are great from there. The limited releases are great from there. But I've actually got an indie bottling of Aberfeldy for tonight. And the other thing that's special about it for me is the bottler is Feis Thomson Whisky. So Finn is like my third cousin, something like that. So so again, I'll get into that a little bit and who I am. So it's a limited release, single cask, 286 bottles. It's bottled as a Pitili, which is the trading name for Aberfeldy. But the Pitili Burn's their water source, so it's pretty easy to figure out where it's from. 10-year-old with a Calvados finish. So Aberfeldy, obviously, it's heather, honey, citrus, very sweet and fruity dram. So the Calvados just really elevates that and just brings out a load of fruit into it. So that's what I'll have tonight. I do need to be careful though because it is 55.9% alcohol. So just very small measures,
That's cool. That is cool. Pitili was the original distillery in Aberfeldy was called Pitili Distillery, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. So the Pitili Burn, basically the story goes that the Dewar brothers knew it was a good water source for whiskey because there had been the Pitili Distillery, which was about 3/4 of a mile upstream from where the distillery is today. If you drive the road from Aberfeldy to Crieff, the hill road, you pass sort of where the original site was, right up in the hill. But so they've carried on that name with the modern bottling.
Was that Elliot running behind you?
There was a slight house invasion there. I'm sharing a house with some pals, so it was Elliot. It was Elliot.
Tell him I said hello. Is there anything on the site now? Pitili Burn.
No, so there's houses nearby, but no, there's nothing around there that would show that there was a distillery there at some point. But it's kind of the story of a lot of these old farm distilleries, unfortunately. But it's good that it still gets talked about, which is quite nice.
Excellent. I used to live near Aberfeldy. I was a big surprise for anybody that's a regular watcher of the Blether. Every time you get some deal on, I would say, I used to live there. I used to live in Glenlyon, so Aberfeldy was like my local town.
Nice.
Absolutely love Glenturret. One of my favourite places ever. It's magical.
Yeah.
It's so
it's beautiful. Yeah, I had a lot of school friends from Glenlyon. It's a beautiful, beautiful spot.
Yeah, we used to work for Chest Hill Estate, sort of like just kind of past the big bend, and we used to shepherd all the sheep up over like Ben Laws and that. Yeah,
nice.
God. I've got the Lefroy Corchus tonight. So it's a French oak. It's yum. I'm enjoying it, as you can see. That's my dram tonight.
Quite a nice wide variety of drams on offer tonight, which is pretty cool. So, Alex, we know what you're drinking. We know now where you're from and why you're drinking it. What can you tell us about who is Alex? Who are we talking to tonight?
God, that's a very deep question, Mike, to get started with. Who is Alex?
Before the drams kick in.
Yeah. As I said, I'm from Perthshire. I'm from a farming family. So we've been farming in and around the sort of Aberfeldy, Grantley area for 400 or 500 years, something like that. My dad's side of the family. Very quickly realised farming wasn't for me as a teenager, so decided to try something else. Got a job as a sort of, I think, 17-year-old working in Blether Castle as a tour guide. Absolutely loved it. Like, I've always loved history, so fell in love with the job and sort of realised, well, tour guiding could be a job. So went to Edinburgh, studied international tourism management at Napier University. While I was there, was just looking for a job in tourism. And the only place that got back to me out of the 200 odd CVs that I put out was the Scotch Whisky Experience. So I got a job there as an 18-year-old. Sure, I'm not the first person to be on here to say that my whiskey career started at the Scotch Whisky Experience. It's the Scotch Whisky Training Academy, as we like to call it. And it was really funny because that was 2013, and I remember I was home for Christmas a couple months later, just after starting, and I was visiting my grandmother, who's a bit of a local historian and has done loads of family research for our family. And I said, I've got this job in whiskey, and I quite like a dram and all that kind of thing. And she goes, oh, well, of course, your great-great-grandfather used to own a distillery. And I was like, did he? No one told me that. So I quite like it. Like, I'd got into whiskey not knowing that the family had history in whiskey. We used to have what was called the Grantley Distillery, which operated on the farm from about 1830 to 1910. And it was my great-great-great-great-grandfather who set it up, and then his grandson, my great-great-grandfather, was the last one to run it. But even going back further than that, so there's a thing on Finn's bottle. He's got 1772 embossed in the bottom of the bottle there, because in 1772 my 7 times great-grandfather was arrested for illegally distilling whiskey. So that's the sort of earliest record we have in the family of whiskey making. So I found out all that after I'd entered the whiskey industry, which was quite cool. After uni, a couple of other jobs, ended up back up in Perthshire working at Aberfeldy for a few years. And then found myself in Crieff. I worked at Glenturret for just over 4 years, visitor centre manager and then brand home manager there, which was an awesome job, really rewarding job. Getting to share, a story about a genuinely really old and storied distillery was amazing. And then as of 1st of April, I'm now self-employed, running my own business, focusing on tourism with history and whiskey tourism. So that's the potted version. Yeah.
That's amazing that, you kind of wanted to get into whiskey and you realize you're part of probably the oldest whiskey dynasty family, because we've had Finn on before, and actually listening to the history of his family, your family, is crazy. It's not only if you got that sort of joint interest of the history and the whiskey, but you can bring that into your work life. That's
100%. And I caught up with Finn this morning for a coffee. We're looking at ways that we can collaborate, because it just makes sense, and it's quite nice. It's quite neat in a way, because my branch of the family were very much stayed at home on the farm and ran the single malt distillery, whereas Finn's branch of the family moved to Perth and became blenders. So, the two branches sort of split off in the mid 1800s, I think it was. But, it's quite nice that Finn and I have sort of both come back into whiskey, which is quite cool. And I remember the first time I met Finn, I had no idea who he was. He was working for Morrison Distillers at the time. And was hosting a tasting in the shop at the Scotch Whisky Experience. And we just got chatting, and he said he was a Thomson. I said I was a Thomson, and we played the game of where are you from? And I said I was from Grantley, and he went, oh, my ancestors were from Grantley. And I was like, really, when? And literally sat down for 5 minutes, both drew a very rough family tree from what we could remember and figured out how we were related, essentially. So yeah, it's a funny old industry, things like that happen.
That's very, very cool. That's superb. Love it.
It's such a small industry as well, though. Like, if you don't know somebody, you definitely know somebody that person knows. Like, just going around Islay, you're literally like, oh, so-and-so, oh, so-and-so, oh, so-and-so. And then sometimes you're like, oh, so-and-so, we'll go the other way. No, not really.
Well, I never even thought about that when I went to Campbelltown last week. Like, we walked into Glen Scotia, and the first two people, literally like two of the first people that we saw were Libby from Glasgow 1770 and Alex from Lochleigh. And I just never even thought I'd bump into people I know and walk in the gate and it's like, oh, hello, there you are, hello. But it's a great industry like that. Everybody's friendly. Well, 99% of people are friendly. And when you're at these events, it's nice just seeing all these people that you know.
Yes, I've never done Campbelltown Festival, but I know Callum, who we got on, is a massive Glen Scotia fan, so he'll be enjoying all these mentions. And you maybe would have met him actually when you're over for the festival. He's
possibly
like biggest advocate for Glen Scotia out there.
I think he's the biggest unpaid ambassador. Unless he maybe does get paid, but he should. If he doesn't, he should. But yeah, just as he admits, he's just a big fanboy / geek / super fan / wee tune native. So that is Callum. It's not his handle, but maybe it should be on the Instagram. So you were drawn into whiskey, without knowing the background. What was it that pulled you right into that historical kind of? Was it the history of whiskey that pulled you into the history side of things, or was that always there that you kind of enjoyed?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I've kind of said for a long time that whiskey for a long time was my job, but history was my passion. So it was more. I loved history and I liked whiskey. I won't lie. At 18 years old, if Edinburgh Castle had phoned me back, I probably would have worked there instead. But no offense to the guys at the Scotch Whisky Experience, they're great people. But I just thought, this will be great, and I like a whiskey. I'd always liked a dram, so that seemed like a pretty good fit. And then it was the longer I worked there, and support, especially from Angela Deneen, who's the operations director there. She kind of realised how good my history knowledge was, and how into it I was. So she started letting me do like history focused special tours and all that kind of thing. And then immediately after leaving the Scotch Whisky Experience, I did a season as a Royal Mile tour guide working for Market Tours. And Kat, the owner, asked me to write a history of whiskey walking tour in the city. So it was like a Royal Mile sort of, talking about all the Porteous riots and George IV's visit and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've always kind of found ways to tie the two together, and even obviously Aberfeldy's such a storied brand and Dewars and everything, so that was a real focus of mine when I was there. But I think it's one of the amazing things about whiskey tourism is you can go on, Lindores is probably the distillery I've been to the most that I haven't worked at, because living so close and pals always want to visit it when they're visiting me. I've probably done the tour of Lindores about 7 or 8 times now, but I've never done the same tour, which I think is the best thing about tourism, and it's why like you shouldn't give tour guides a script that they have to follow. You should let them do what they want, because we used to always say this at Glenturret. If you came on my tour, it was history focused, and then you went on Don's tour, who was the senior guide, and Don was a geologist, so it was all about the water and how that affected it and the natural chemistry and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I always found ways to work the history into it, because that was really important for me. And ultimately, I think people get into whiskey because, out with the fact it's a nice drink, it's the stories, I think, that get people into whiskey, which is what you guys do essentially. So I think it's such an important part of our industry.
All the guys who watch know that I'm a massive advocate of VC staff not getting enough limelight or support or recognition for what they do, because it's one of those that one of those. I just realised that I've spelled Feis Ile with an A instead of an E. I haven't got my glasses on. It looks like an A. But
you'll be getting hate mail.
Oh, I know. I'm gonna have to.
I think that says Feis Ile. I think is what you've put there.
You don't even don't trigger my rage even further. But the thing about like visitor centres, they draw such a broad spectrum of people. Like, you know, the team that work with me, we've got everything from ex-business owners to, you know, we've had ex-police, we've had ex-nurses, we've had just like such a broad variety. And like you say, they all come like with their own, you know, skill set or interest or focus. And yeah, a good tour, it's going to be different it should be different every time you go. There's certain things you kind of want people to say, like, you know, the stuff that's relevant, like the true stuff. But it's so nice that they can just make it their own.
Yeah, I've been so lucky in 14 years in tourism. Like, the people I've worked with are incredible, and you know, especially being so young, starting off in the industry, like getting to work with these people that had these amazing lives and careers. Like, I remember I worked with a guy when I was at Blair Castle. So I was 17, and I was working with this guy who did like 3 tours a month, and he would just sort of pitch up kind of when he felt like it, and would just come and do a couple of tours and everything. And he was this amazing old guy called Jürgen, who I kid you not, was, when he was younger, was in the Hitler Youth. Now, you know, he had no choice at that point, and he said he hated it and all this kind of thing. But like, and then he became like a high-level executive. He would say that, wouldn't he? Yeah. And then his, you know, after the war, he married this girl who was called Teddy, who was the daughter of a French aristocrat. So you had this like amazing German guy married to this French aristocrat, but they were living in Blether, you know, and Jürgen would start every day by raising the flag of the old German Empire in his garden while playing a bugle. And, you know, this is a man in his 80s. So I'm 17 and just sort of thrown in with this guy. And I used to just pester the hell out of him and just follow him around and be like, what were you doing in the 60s? What were you doing in the 70s? What was this like? What was that like? Because, yeah, that's brilliant. When you get to work across generations, you get to learn from so many people and take in their life experiences. And I used to say it when new tour guides would start at Glenturret, you know, the team there is awesome. They're a really, really cool team. And we've got, you know, guys like Don, used to be a geologist, and a guy called Alan, who worked in the oil industry and was in Iraq and Kuwait and all this kind of stuff. So he's super, super interesting. So the new guys would like latch on to the old boys and want to hear all their stories and all that kind of thing. And they'd come to me, and I would just be like, I've just been in tourism since I was 17. I've not really got anything to say. You know, I'm a career politician, essentially, in comparison to these guys that have gone and had their exciting lives.
Yeah. You've got a few of those guys at Glengarry just now, don't you? You've got former prison wardens from Peterhead. And,
yeah. And he's so lovely, because like whenever you tell a story, let's just say it's something, you know, quite an exciting story, you think you've told it really well, and it's a really good story, and he's so broad, like really broad Aberdeenshire accent, and he's like, oh, that reminds me of the time that I was handcuffed to the Lockerbie bomber. I'm like, I can't top that. Like, I'm out now. Like, you know, you top trump me. I can't do it. But yeah, it's fantastic. He used to do the tours at Peterhead Prison as well. So it's just kind of sort of he's naturally quite gifted to storyteller, and people just love how Doric he is, because he's just such a strong accent.
The
tourists can only understand every third word, but they're having a nice time, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
I remember being on tour at Glendronach. I'm trying to remember his name. There's an old lad, Ernie, maybe, and he was like proper farmer Doric. Like, you know, my dad would struggle to understand him. And he was out on a tour with this German group. It wasn't my group, but I was there with a group anyway, and kind of overlapped. And in he came. They were having a whale of a time, laughing and joking and all that. And I was like, God, they must have had a great time. And then they sat down, and he started speaking to them about the drams. And I was struggling to understand what he was saying. And I said to one of the guys who was passing the toilet, he goes, how do you guys keeping up? What is it? And they're like, oh, we have no idea what he's saying, but he says it in a way that makes us laugh. And it was just like, oh, fine, great.
Well, it's such a. I feel it's such a Scottish thing of like, and it's Scottish. In my opinion, Scottish people make very good tour guides because, like, you know, we are quite naturally gifted storytellers. A lot of Scottish people, and my fiance is from New Zealand. So I always wind her up, and I'm always like, sorry, Scottish people are funnier than New Zealanders. Like, we just are. We're just funnier, you know. And I remember some of her pals were visiting from New Zealand a couple of years ago, and we'd been in the pub with them and two of my best mates in the industry, Ali Baxter, who's visitor experience manager at Scotch Whisky Experience, and Michael McKean, who works in the Scotch bar at the Balmoral. So we're talking about whiskey, and it was during the Rugby World Cup, so we're talking about rugby and all that kind of thing. I remember one of the girls said later on that night, she was like, do you know what I love about Alex and his pals? Everything that they say, they fully believe. She was like, they say everything with such passion and such conviction. And I just feel like that's just like a very, you know, it's a very Scottish thing, is we're so like self-assured and I'm going to tell this story and you believe it because I believe it and it's going to be funny, it's going to be great. And yeah, like, yeah, you said it there, Kat. Like, I don't always think brands appreciate the tour guides enough for what they do, because, you know, at the end of the day, the brand ambassador is the glamorous job, but your tour guide is a brand ambassador as well. And for a lot of these distilleries that have a lot of visitors a year, arguably the tour guides are probably talking to more people than the brand ambassadors are, you know, and you've got to make them feel like they're part of the brand, and you've got to get them to buy into the brand without just telling them buy into the brand. Like, you have to make them feel the brand.
Yeah, and they're doing that, you know, sort of changing the way they present depending on the crowd they've got, whether it's newbies, whether it's, you know, whiskey geeks. And quite often, like the example that gentleman you gave, probably can do it fluently in German and then switch maybe into French and then go back into English, and then, you know, the ins and outs of distillation fully, you know, need to know about history. Like, yeah, it's massively underrated side of the whiskey industry. And let me just pull out my soapbox there. But yeah, my time people fall in love with a whiskey because they just really enjoyed their tour, you know, because they just got so lost in that moment, and that's just down to a really good guide. Yeah, the distillery helps, you know, you know, whether it's like, you know, a pretty location or, you know, they've got cool quirky bits in there, but yeah, the guide's not there to point it out, then they're not going to notice it. So,
well, I've seen it where, you know, when I was at Glenturret especially, people would come in knowing nothing about the brand, and they would spend an hour and a half, whatever it was, with Don or with, you know, John, who used to be a teacher, and then they would spend £1,400 on a bottle of whiskey, you know, because the passion they've seen these guys putting across has done it. And I talk about this a lot. And I wrote my dissertation about distillery visitor centres. And yeah, so it was called Highland Distilleries as Viable Visitor Attractions. I've never gone back and read it because I think it would just make me cringe now. But you know, one of the things that I
send that dissertation to Kat. We were talking last week about writing a book about stories from the visitor centre. So we can.
I don't even know if I have access to it anymore. I will try and find it, and I'll read it. And if it's not too bad, I'll send it to you. I mean, I got a 2-1, so it can't have been that good. But yeah, and one of the things I talked about in that was, if you think about it like this, right? What's the first thing you do when you click on a website, right? You reject all the cookies, and you open up YouTube, right? And you think, oh God, I've got to wait for this bloody advert to finish. Where's the skip ad button? And, you know, Amazon Prime has now introduced adverts at the basic pay rate and all that kind of thing. We spend our lives frustrated by adverts and trying to get adverts out of our faces, and then we pay £20 to walk around a distillery and have someone advertise to us for an hour, because that's what a distillery visitor centre is. It's an advert, you know. I'm going to tell you for an hour why you should feel emotionally connected to this brand, but it's even better than an advert, because at the end of it, you get the people a little bit tipsy and then you send them to the shop. Yeah. Fantastic. Like, what an amazing opportunity. And I never understand distilleries, especially new distilleries that open, that don't have a visitor centre, because that's brand advocacy 101 as far as I'm concerned, is the visitor centre.
Or probably more prominent at the moment, ones who are closing down their visitor centres. Yes,
that's obviously very hot at the moment. Yeah, I'll never get that, frankly.
I know, because it can go the other way as well. You can get a guide that's maybe not that great, like just put you off a place completely. I've only had that one time, and like I think the whole tour pretty much just about them and their opinions. By the end, he said, "Oh, we'll do the tasting, but like, what's the point in buying this? You can get a bottle of like Aldi's Own for like 20 quid." I'm like, "Ooh, that whiskey's paying your wages."
Yeah. No, I had it at one where I was working for Dewar's at this point, and I've always loved blended whiskey, and been a big advocate for blended whiskey, especially Dewar's, which I think is one of the best ones. And I was doing this tour of this distillery with a couple of mates, and tour guide says to someone says to the tour guide, "Does any of your stuff go into blends?" And the tour guide does a proper like he's offended, and he goes, "Our single malt is far too good for blending. Blending is made with harsher, inferior single malt whiskies that you would never dream of selling to the public. We would not stoop to doing that with ours." And I literally, my pals like almost had to hold me back. I was like, "I'm going to hit this, man." Like, the funniest part was he looked like Dougie MacLean. He could have been Dougie MacLean's twin. It was so funny. And he had this voice. He was like, "Welcome to this distillery." And the whole tour, I was like, I hate this man and everything he stands for. So yeah, if you don't train your guides properly, then yeah, it can totally ruin the experience. One of my real bugbears, and I don't know how to fix this. I think that the right people to fix it are the Edinburgh Whisky Academy, and I would urge distilleries to look into courses like the Edinburgh Whisky Academy for your visitor centre staff. Like, we did it when I was at Glenturret. I qualified as a trainer, and then I delivered the course to all of my team and everything. Distillery tour guides get malting wrong every single time because it's not done on site. So if they get mashing wrong or fermentation wrong, the production staff hear it and they go and correct them, right? But because malting's not done on site, the production staff themselves don't often know that the tour guides are getting it wrong. And that's literally the first thing you hear about production at every single tour. So I've found myself doing, 20 or 30 tours, and you're in room one, you're building that, you're establishing that relationship with the tour guide and thinking, that's just not how malting works. Yeah. And then that's credibility gone most of the time.
I think the biggest, for me, one of the biggest things about tour guides, if you don't have any form of floor malting on site, the tour guides will tell you the process, and then they'll say, "But we don't do that way anymore. Let's move on to when we get it." And there's no kind of heart back. So this is actually how it's done nowadays. It's all, if they've got a malt floor that's maybe not used anymore or something, they could show it and say, "This is what we used to do, but we don't do that. Move on." And I'm immediately, as I guess, thinking, well, do you know how it's done? Or where does that malt come from, and how is it ordered or processed off-site?
Yeah. So we did the Edinburgh Whisky Academy with the team, and then we actually took the visitor centre team to Simpsons, and we spent the day at Simpsons Mall. The guys down there were great. Took us around the whole plant, which is like the size of Pitlochry, Simpsons. It's absolutely mad place. And yeah, the team came back with a real knowledge for it, but a real passion to get it right as well. And then shadowing the guys' tours a couple of months later.
We do something similar with our Highland Whisky Academy, but we've kind of paused this now because I've had kids and moved premises and all that. But we go up to Chris Malt up by Bucky,
nice,
and do the same thing. I think it's important because it's something that people don't see. Yeah, and it's completely different.
You come to Geary, and then you can just get a really thorough explanation of floor malting and watch it all happening.
True.
But even then, I love Glengeary. You know how much I love it, and you do that 25%, and everyone gets to see it, and it's unique and brilliant. But still, you don't explain how it's done commercially. You know what I mean? It's just for the.
Right, so we do if people want to know, but
yeah.
There's not much point in us telling people that when we're really trying to. The whole USP is focusing on the importance of the floor malting and the difference it makes to whiskey, as opposed to if you're 100% commercial malt. So if we're 100% commercial malt, I'd probably go into a lot more detail about that because that's relevant to the whiskey. Whereas, we're spending, we had an extra half hour on the tour just so we could talk about the malting floor. So, I'd rather people understood the science of why we would do that, because we're not just doing it because it's fun for tourists. Like, it's really important to the end spirit. But yeah, I mean, the guys know how to talk about, like, commercial maltings if they were asked. Yeah. But yeah, some people do ask, but it's very rare, and they're usually just kind of like oohing and ahhing over the barley and, like, you know, trying to eat it.
They're distracted by shiny floors. Well, not shiny floors, but
not yeah. Yeah. But we took our guys up to the Aberdeen Grain to see just the local barley coming into the local processing plant, which, you know, dries it all out and stuff, and seeing how that all works. So yeah, I think we must have a friend of yours on, Alex. He's just written in, Christ, I cannot escape Alex's patter.
So this is, I've mentioned him a couple of times, that's Ali Baxter. So that's Ali from Scotch Whisky Experience. Hi Ali, how you doing? You all right? Actually, I wanted to pick up on a comment there that Ed Friday had said. He said, I know folks say that the visitor centres aren't profitable objectively, but you can't measure the people who leave and buy the stuff later when they see it back home. Recommend it to others. Spot on.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Your guide is so important. And, you know, especially, and I think you kind of touched on it, is when people come, this could be their only chance to visit a distillery. Everyone's bucket list visiting Scotland is, I want to go to a distillery, I want to climb a hill, I want to visit a castle, maybe play a round of golf.
Well, it was always so special when I worked at Dewar's, because it's obviously such a big brand in the States, Dewar's. None of them know how to pronounce it, but it's a huge brand in the States. You guys have the doors, was always the question that would get asked.
I thought it'd be Dewar's.
Yeah, it's like doors. And you would say Dewar's, and people would think you were talking about Jura. A lot of really sort of confusing cyclical conversations that would go on like that. But you get people coming in who were, you know, in their early 20s and all that, who had no association with whiskey at all. But what they did know was that their grandfather drank White Label. So they had promised him that when they came to Scotland, they would go and visit Dewar's, and it was like a pilgrimage for them. So again, you know, maybe they were only spending £15 on their tour ticket and maybe £20 on a bobble hat, right? But what you can't quantify is that 4 generations before that of buying White Label that have then caused them to come into that visitor centre. And, you know, like these are global brands now. Like I was in New Zealand up until last week, in New Zealand and Fiji, and, you know, flying home through the airport in Fiji and Nandi, and there's a big display about Aberfeldy 12-year-olds and all this kind of thing. So yeah, these people that are coming to the distillery, they're if you do a good enough job, they're setting out into the world as brand ambassadors and brand advocates. So it's a really powerful thing, a good tour.
You just need to do like the festival just to see if people have flown in from all around the world. I think the whole of Germany has left. Like the car park at Coleman today, it was like a sort of German sort of forecourt at a garage. There was so many people from around the world that come out to this tiny little, well, not tiny island, but this island for this festival. And you can see, like, you know, a lot of the VC staff are like rock stars to these guys, you know, because like they're like, oh, do you remember, you know, you did my tour 6 years ago and now I'm fully decked out in tattoos that say Brook-Laddie over my whole body. But it's very cool. It's and there's not many other industries where you can have that level of connection with people that come in. Like, you know, you can own a baker shop and do really, really good buns, but not many people are going to get your name tattooed to their ass because your buns are really good. That's one of the weirdest things I've just said.
I mean, I remember towards the end of last year at Glenturret, I was at Whisky Show in London and got chatting to these guys. I think they were Dutch, and, you know, it's like they're like the Germans, as you know, like they're mad for it, and they come over in massive groups and all that kind of thing. So I think there was 10 of them had all come over. They were doing Whisky Show, and then they were all flying up to Scotland. And I must have chatted to them for about half an hour on the stand, and I was giving them, I pretty much just gave them everything, essentially, including the under the table stuff and all that. And then they're sort of getting out their phones and they're going, so where's your distillery again? And I pointed it on the map, and they went, oh, right. Oh, we're going to pass there. And it turned out the day they were going to pass there was the day that I was back from London. So I said, well, look, if you want, like, swing by. So, you know, that was maybe the Saturday. And then fast forward to next Thursday, these 10 Dutch guys turn up at the distillery, and I do them a free tour. And then, you know, we finish in the bar, give them some other things they hadn't tried. I think between the 10 of them, they spent something like £1,500 in the shop, and that's not what it was about for me. That's not why I was doing it. But like, they're going to go out into the world now as lifelong Glenturret fans because they've had that experience in London that they've then come up and seen the distillery and loved it. It's such a powerful thing.
I think for us in the shop is equally important as somebody will come in and they'll maybe look for a whiskey to take home with them. They're visiting and it's the whiskies that have a story behind them, whether it's, about the production or the locality or wherever it is. If you could tell a good story about how that ended up in a bottle, that's far better than here's a kind of fairly generic 12-year-old that is non-offensive, but it'll do the job kind of thing. I'm just trying to take that visitor experience into the shop and kind of collate it a little bit. We have loads of new blends or new releases coming out, and it's the ones that if there's a brand ambassador comes up and does the story in the shop or trains the staff on it, we remember that story. Those are the ones that are going to sell far better than, oh, here's a bottle, taste it yourself and see what you think.
Yeah, ultimately it might not be the nicest whiskey that you've got on your shelf, but if it's the best story, people are going to do it. And I remember, like, I was in a whiskey festival for Finn last year, and a guy comes up to the table and he just goes, "Right, I've never heard of your brand before. Sell me your brand." And he was as cut and dry as that. "Sell me your brand," right? And I picked up the bottle and I said, "You see at the bottom there, it says 1772. I said, "That's when my 7 times great grandfather was arrested for illegally distilling whiskey." And he went, "I'm going to stop you right there. You've got me." Like it can be simple as that. And, quite good time. And it brings me on. Someone said in the comments, in my opinion, what makes you a great, successful brand ambassador? I use this word a lot when talking about whiskey. It's authenticity. If you, don't say it if you don't know it. I think brands need to recognize that with their brand ambassadors. Like, get your brand ambassadors involved in the process of actually putting the whiskey together. They don't have to be actually doing it, but make sure they have the full spec on the whiskies. Make sure they feel like they're involved in the process. And it's the same with VC staff as well, so that when they're out there sharing that with people, the people that they're talking to think, wow, this guy, he knows his stuff. He's passionate about this and he knows his stuff. But you need to have the passion for it, but you need to be authentic with it as well.
Yeah. People can be so quick if they even and they have it in the tastings as well. Or I'm sure you might have seen it around the visitor centre. If you tell them something, they'll pick up their phone and they can Google it. Or if you're not sure, by the time you finish saying, "Oh, I'm not too sure, but I'll find out for you," boom, 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 Google goes, "Well, actually, here we go." And they're so quick to be able to pick up their phone. So yeah, I completely agree. Don't bullshit them, because within seconds you'll be called out.
Yeah, people shouldn't expect a guy to know absolutely every single thing that there is about every nuance of production or every type of, I don't know, ester created or the full 230 years worth of history. But as long as you are honest and say, "Do you know what? Actually, nobody's asked me that before. Like, I don't know what that bracket does. I'm not sure why you want to know what it does, but we can definitely find out."
We used to talk about this a lot at Glenturret when people would ask questions like, "What does that bracket do?" And I love the distillery manager from Glenturret, a guy called Ian Rennick. He's a real, like, quiet legend of the industry. And Ian, you'd ask him things like that, and you'd say, "Oh, customers ask me this," and he'd just go, "Why do they want to know that?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, just they do." And he was like, "Tell them to bugger off. Like, they don't need to know that, And there's an element of that of like, does knowing what that bracket does make you enjoy the whiskey more? No. So, but you know what it's like, whiskey geeks get these questions in their head and they want to ask them. But you'll have said this to your staff.
Ask a question no one's asked before, don't they?
Yeah, 100%. You want to stump the tour guides at the end of the day. Most people do. But you'll have had this conversation before, Kat, with staff where, what do you say to people when they're guides? Well, if you get asked a question that you don't know the answer to, you never say, "I don't know." You say, "I don't know, but I'll find out," right? And I always say this, if there's no one on site that can give you the answer, get their email address, we'll figure it out and we'll email them. So even if they're not getting the answer on the day, they're still going to get it. And I find myself sitting in my office at Glenturret, pulling whiskey books off the shelf and being like, "I don't actually know the answer to that, God." And then emailing someone 2 or 3 days later because we've had a chat around the table and we've got the answer and we've given it to them. So yeah, it doesn't help them enjoy the whiskey anymore, but it legitimizes you in a way.
Yeah, I think the worst thing you can do is lie, make it up on the spot, and I've come across too many people who do that eventually they get found out, and their credibility just bottoms out.
Sometimes it's panic mode. I don't think a guide will always lie on purpose. It'll be like I think that's the reason.
I know a couple.
Okay.
Not guides. Well, one guide. I've had two experiences with tour guides that I haven't liked. One I can kind of forgive because it was a second language and it was very scripted.
Right.
And I may be fairly new into the job, judging it. But it was the premium tour we'd booked on. So for a premium tour, it wasn't a premium experience. So I maybe been a bit harsh on that. The other one was a very, very well-known Johnny Walker experience. Not the Johnny Walker experience, but distillery. And very similar to your one with the blend offense that the guy took. This guy said, well, if the whiskey's not good enough, we just pour it down the sink. It's not going anywhere near a cask. And I explained to the guys on the bus afterwards, nobody's pouring a full cask. It's going to go into a blend for volume, or it's going to do something will happen with it. It'll get rebranded. They're not just going to pour out.
One of the maddest ones I've ever heard was when I was a Royal Mile guide, and I always advocate this for people whenever they're going abroad, is if you want to do a city tour, you need to do your research on who you're booking through. And I would normally recommend in Edinburgh doing one of the paid tours. The free tours are great. I've done them myself in the past, but like with the paid tours, you know that those staff have done an exam before they've been signed off and all that kind of thing. So I used to overhear this guide all the time. He was from Western Australia, and he was wearing a kilt that he'd bought at a shop on the Royal Mile, made of polyester probably. And I walked past him once as we were going up to Edinburgh Castle. He was coming out, and I heard him say to his group, "Gaelic is a language that no one speaks anymore. That is a combination of English, Welsh, and German." And I was like, "Oh, I know quite a lot of Gaelic speakers, And I gathered my group in and I said, "Can I just check? Did everybody overhear what that guy said?" And they were like, "Yeah, you did." And they're like, "Right, before we go into the castle, we're going to talk about why that's wrong for 5 minutes, okay?" But there was no need for him to say that. He could have just said, "Oh, Gaelic's a minority language." That's all you need to say. You don't need to make that up, because the guests don't know, and then they're going to go home and tell someone, and then the person they tell is going to go, "I don't think that's right," and then they're like an idiot. So it's just not worth it.
Yeah,
no, definitely not. Can I just say hello quickly to somebody? Paul's dad, Tam, is watching for the first time tonight, so we need to say hello to Tam. Hi, Tam.
Hi, Tam.
Cheers. Get Paul in. Get him to talk about himself a little bit.
We've already got a guest on. You can sit in the quiet corner over there. On the subject of tours and things, so your new business, your Full Scottish Experience, and I gave that a follow earlier today, so guys, go and have a look at it. Part of it is tour development and sort of working with distilleries for tour creation, I guess, or brand story creation. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long time coming, the getting everything launched. Like I've been planning this for over a year now, and I wanted to use what I perceive as skills and strengths and expertise to just try and make this industry what I help it, basically. So the part of it that pertains to the industry itself is I'm not saying that I'm the kind of person that's going to come in and write your brand copy for you and all that kind of thing, because that's not my background. But from a very practical point of view, if there's been a shift in the industry in the last few years where a lot of brands now don't have dedicated ambassadors. So one of the things that I'm speaking to brands about is, well, look, if you need an ambassador to go to an event for you, you pay my day rate and I go and do it for you, essentially. A freelance ambassador, essentially. And I've done a bit of that already with some small brands, which has been really cool. But yeah, the other part of that is, I've worked in some of the best and busiest tourist attractions in this country, and especially in whiskey. And I know what makes a good tour. So if brands are looking for help with their tour script, so they're looking for help with, okay, so how should we be training our guys to talk about this specific thing? That's where my expertise is, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. Is when you hire a tour guide, you can train them how to deliver a really good tour, but are you training them how to be a tour guide? Because delivering a tour and being a tour guide are two totally separate things. And I saw it the other day. I was at a distillery and watched a tour guide walk the whole way up a path with a group of 16 people. So he's walking backwards the whole way up the path and guiding as he's going. And he's going, look at that over there, look at that over there, look at that over there. You never guide while you're walking, because the person at the back can't hear you. And you're unsafe. You're going to trip over something, and you never walk backwards because it's unsafe. You're going to trip over something. So it's these elements of it that I really want to work with distilleries to try and build. Is I'm not necessarily there to teach you guys how to talk about whiskey and the knowledge. It's the practicalities of tour guiding that I think we could really do with a bit more of in Scotch whisky distilleries. So that's the industry part of it, and then the other part of the business is touring myself. So I've been a tour guide, as I said, all across the country. So offering tours of the whole of Scotland, whether it's walking tours of Edinburgh or a family group wanting picked up from Edinburgh and taken around Scotland for 7 days, and then bespoke whiskey tastings. So bars, hotels, restaurants, anything like that, bespoke whiskey tastings. So quite a varied, thing. But I just thought, well, how can I segment my skills and make that into a business essentially?
That's fantastic. So have you kind of still in development stage, or have you got bookings for the season? Does it, you're busy for the summer?
officially launched end of March, but had sort of been talking to people in the background before that, obviously. So I've got bookings over summer. It's mostly through third parties at the moment. So I work with a really good company called Macintosh Tours, who are based in Bankfoot near Perth. Raymond Macintosh, the founder of the company, was my old PE teacher. So we just got chatting one day, and I was telling him what I was doing, and he was like, well, if you're ever looking for any tours, let me know, I'll give you some business. So I would do a bit with him. So I've got a couple of tours with him over the next few weeks. And then on the whiskey side of things, there's a couple of venues that I work with already for tastings, which is really cool. So that sort of ticks over a bit in the background already. But yeah, the last, as I said, I was in New Zealand for a month. Terrible timing, as much as it was an amazing trip, and I loved it, because I launched a business on the 1st of April and then proceeded to bugger off to the Southern Hemisphere for a month, which wasn't the best timing. But since we've been back for the last sort of week and a half, I've really been sort of throwing myself into it and just pestering folk, essentially. That's what you got to do in this situation.
Yeah, I imagine you have quite a lot of contacts, hopefully, that kind of get you started anyway, and then just kind of building out on that. And they're so closely linked to sort of travel and tourism and whiskey, obviously, because they're one in, whiskey's a travel destination, but you quite often just start seeing the same guides or you work with the same companies, and so yeah, it sounds really interesting. So check it out, guys, especially because we've got some international viewers, so you never know if they want to come over to
100%.
Scotland, they can come and look you up.
I've popped
And even
into the chat there for you. The guys at home can.
Oh, perfect, thank you. But even if anyone's coming to Scotland, and you don't, it doesn't have to be that you're booking me for a tour and I'm going to take you around and all that. If it is just a case of you're looking for a bit of advice, drop me a message. Like, happy to help. I love Scotland. I love traveling around Scotland. Like, I was coming back from Edinburgh today, and I was just thinking, what am I going to do myself? It's a beautiful day. So I just stopped off at Doon and went and toured Doon Castle, because it's one of my absolute favourites. And I just thought, I know what I want to be on a beautiful day. I want to be in an old castle, having a wander around. So, it's, just let me know if you're ever needing any advice, anyone.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Awesome. as a history buff, take away the tour guide side of things. You're not touring anyone. You're going somewhere yourself.
Yeah.
Do you prefer somewhere like Huntly Castle or Slains Castle, which is a ruin that you're allowed to explore yourself, or do you like something where you can go in like a Cawdor Castle or Blair House where you can go and be guided round? What would you prefer?
Yeah, I mean, they both. I'm going to give a real politician's answer here. Is they both got their merits. I think the challenge with the put together castles is the interpretation is often skewed by modernity. So I'll give you an example. I was down in the north of England last year, and we visited Bamborough Castle. Now, that's been on my bucket list for years. Like, an iconic English castle. You've got the connections with the Vikings, and like The Last Kingdom is such a cool TV show, and I love the books and everything. And it's just such an icon on the hill and everything. So I really want to tour Bamborough Castle, but the castle is now owned by a family of shipping magnates who bought it in like the 19th century and sort of renovated it and brought it back to life and everything. So when you do the tour, what you learn about is this family of shipping magnates and how they resurrected the castle and all that kind of thing. And so I enjoyed it. Like, for what the experience was, I enjoyed it. But I came away thinking, like, I wanted to learn about the Vikings, attacking Lindisfarne and all this kind of thing. So castles that are put together have to be very careful in how they're interpreting their story, because ultimately they think the most important thing is them and how they rescued it and all that kind of thing. But that's not what people are visiting a castle for most of the time. So, I mean, Blair is one of my all-time favorites, obviously, because I worked there. And I think the way they've done it is really, really good, the way they've balanced the modern with history. But there is just something about going and just seeing some old stones, and that's what I love about Doon. Doon is so well preserved. Like, it's from the early 1400s, and you can walk in every room and you can, really get a feel for what it would look like when the Duke of Albany lived there. And one of my favorites is a castle called Finn Larrig, which is in Cullen, just on the west side of Loch Tay. And no one knows about Finn Larrig. Like, it's not a well-known castle at all, but you sort of you come into Cullen, turn off as if you're heading down to the caravan park, drive past that, and then it's private land. It's on someone's farm, but he maintains it and lets people wander around it. And it's in a circle of trees, sort of, and it's so eerie. You walk through the trees, and suddenly it just appears. And because you're surrounded by the trees, it's like silent. And it was it was a castle owned by the Campbells, and as we all know, they were pretty bad bastards, the Campbells. So, there's a beheading pit next to the castle. It's the only one in Scotland that's got a beheading pit. And, the hanging tree is still standing. The old oak that they used to hang people from is still standing. So it's so atmospheric when you walk into it. And, I can walk around there for hours and just, you feel like you're steeped in that history. So I don't think you get that necessarily with the put together castles. You'll get more of the story because you can see it, but there's something about the old stones, which I think are really,
your imagination kind of guide you more than
100%.
Yeah,
I had no idea about that castle. I used to live there, and I didn't know that castle existed at all. I found a castle the other weekend. Well, I knew it was there, but I'd never visited. I'm trying to rack my brains, trying to remember what it's called. It's one of those Doric words. It's not pronounced how it looks. Mike.
Like Geary?
Aye, just like that,
yeah. Where is it?
Out in Methlick Road.
Toon.
No.
No?
Yeah, it looks like it begins with a G, like a GH. Geet, like it looks like G. Gate. Castle. And it's literally just you go through like the kind of the woods and you kind of come out into just an open field,
right.
And it's absolutely beautiful, and it's almost kind of been swallowed by nature a little bit. But so much of it's intact, like internally. There's like bits of staircase and yeah, it's just there. Like
Yeah.
Anybody can just walk up to it. They put a sign up saying, dangerous, don't go in, but it's fine. Well, no, actually, I'm not endorsing that, guys. Follow the signs. But
Whiskey
really
Blether
cool.
says ignore the signs. Yeah.
I know, right? But yeah, really, really cool. And then I used to take my kids to play at there was just an abandoned castle as well. It's where like Dalriata is, where you could walk past all the tombs, and you kind of get up to the village where the church is, but it's the castle just before it. And we just the kids used to just play in there all day. It was so cool. I do quite like Auchindoun as well in the Cabra. It's a completely.
That's a great aesthetic castle as well. You see it from afar, just on the hill on its own. It's it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Top of my list at the moment to visit is Lochindarb, which is near it's near Aberlour. It's up that neck of the woods. So if you go the sort of back road into Speyside, you go off at Carbridge, and go the back road, which is a really fun road. You'll pass by Lochindarb, and it was known as the Wolf's Den, Lochindarb. It was the castle for the Earls of Buchan, and the most famous one was Alexander Stewart, the Wolf of Badenoch. He's the one that burned down Elgin Cathedral, and he's buried in Dunkeld Cathedral, which is obviously very near me. And he's this fascinating character in Scottish history, because there's so few people in history. Something that George R. R. Martin talks about a lot when he was writing Game of Thrones was, he quite liked characters that were morally quite grey, whereas you look at someone like Tolkien and he wrote good characters and bad characters, right? What I love about the Wolf of Badenoch was he was just a bastard. Like, there was nothing nice or good about the Wolf of Badenoch at all. Like, he burned down Elgin Cathedral because he just pitched up one day and said to the bishop, you owe me rent now for the cathedral. Like, it's on my land, you owe me rent. And the bishop was like, well, no, I don't. Like, here's all these charters that say I don't owe you rent and all that. And he was like, but you do though, don't you? And just burned the cathedral down, essentially. So, it's so cool. But Lochindarb is a ruin, and it sits on an island in the middle of the lot.
On an island.
Yeah, and it's not
linked to the Commons as well, isn't it?
Yes, that's it. So the Commons that was their castle up until they sort of fell after the Wars of Scottish Independence because of their relationship with against the Bruce. And then
the Battle of Barra.
Yes,
pretty much halfway between where I'm sitting and Cat Works.
Oh, right, nice.
The Battle of Barra took place the raping of Barra, I think it's locally known as. John Comyn III, I think, was defeated, and it was a bit of a massacre afterwards. Bruce was not a happy chappy with them Commons.
No. But I mean, this is something I talk about a lot with talking about history with people. Is like, it's so easy, to view history like J.R.R. Tolkien wrote it, and to have the goodies and the baddies. So, like, we're so guilty of it in Scotland as Edward the First of England is the big bad and all that kind of thing, right? But actually, if you're English, he's probably quite good. He was a crusader as a prince, and then he, provided stable government after his father was not quite as stable and all that kind of thing. I mean, Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones is based on Edward the First, that kind of, no nonsense guy that came in and sorted it out and all that kind of thing. But obviously we view him as horrible, and the things he did, especially like the sack of Berwick and stuff like that. So, but when you find a character like the Wolf of Badenoch, you're just like, no redeeming qualities at all. Like, that's fascinating. And so to get to Lochindarb, the only way to get there is by boat. And there aren't, it's not like Loch Leven, for example, where there's a boat service that takes you out there. You just have to bring your own boat, basically. So, now that I've got a bit more free time on my hands, I'm going to borrow it. I've got a paddle board, so I'm just going to go up there one day and just paddle board out to it and just spend the day walking around the ruin, which sounds really sad, but that is my idea of a perfect day, basically.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty good.
Camp out on it. Get a wee tent or a bag or something, and just have a wee.
To me and the ghost of Clan Common.
That would be cool. Yeah. Oh, that sounds like an epic wee pilgrimage. That, I like the sound of it.
Yeah.
It does. You have to get a hip flask dram. What would your hip flask dram be for that journey over?
Something like that. I mean, I guess you'd probably want something from the northeast, wouldn't you? To be to be connected to that. Just because I know Ali's listening, I would say I'd go for a Glen Murray, just as a tribute to the Wolf Barn and down Elgin Cathedral, just to keep that legacy going. But and that things like that are really why I wanted to start the tourism arm of the company, because if you come to Scotland and you Google things to do in this area and all that, Lochendorf's probably not going to come up, right? And you said it there, Kat, like you lived near Finlarrig and you didn't know it was there. So you need people that know these things, that are going to share these things with people. And I think something I'm really sad about in the Scottish tourism industry now is the death of the Visit Scotland eye centres. So, like, I remember when I was a kid, there was one in Aberfeldy, there was one in Pitlochry, one in Dunkeld, and they were always busy. But obviously now everybody Googles it. And, I'm as guilty as anyone. Like, when I'm abroad, that's what me and my partner do, is we Google it and we make our plans based on that. But you do lose something when you're not speaking to the locals anymore, because ultimately you're only going to go to the things that the algorithm tells you to go to, essentially.
Yeah. That's a good thing about, or one of the things you could really emphasize at a visitor centre, or for us in our bar, because that's where your one-to-one contact's going to be, is you've got this encapsulated audience. Now you've had a great tour of Glengarry, what's your plans? Or why are you here? Or we're here to follow family history, or we're here to do a wee pilgrimage or whatever. Have you heard of X, Y, and Z? Really cool place. I think that's, we quite often in our tours from the shop, whiskey tours, we'll go up to the monument at Harlaw, or we'll drive past the Bruce's seat at Meldrum, and we'll talk about why they're significant and a little bit of history. So they won't go away. Yeah, we did a couple of whiskey tours, but we had a dram at this ancient battle site as well, which was pretty cool. Never done that in a tour before. But
it was something I used to do with the team at Glenturret. It was a couple times a year normally. We would close for the day and we would just take the team out for the day. And, we would quite often visit the local distilleries. So we'd do the likes of Aberfeldy, Blair Athol, Lindores, Tullybarden. But I would always say that it's not just about whiskey today. So we're going to go visit, we're going to go visit a castle. We're going to, go and visit a battlefield and all that kind of thing. Because, you're a brand ambassador for the area. And, ultimately, Perthshire tourism is so funny, because one thing we talk a lot about in Perthshire tourism is people refer to Perthshire as the gateway to the Highlands, right? And Stirling say it's the gateway to the Highlands. But I've heard this said at so many meetings of various Perthshire tourism groups and all that kind of thing. People don't stop in a gateway. And that's what we need people to do, is we need people to stop. So, as a tour guide at a distillery in Perthshire, or a tour guide at a castle in Perthshire, you're not just representing that brand or that castle. You're trying to get people to stay in your area. So if they do the tour, as you said, if they do the tour at your distillery, and you can go, where are you going after this? Oh, look, there's a great castle here. You should go and see that. Like, why don't you do this while you're in the area and all that kind of thing? That it benefits all of us. It's the rising tide lifts the boats. It's what we need.
Yeah, definitely. It's something we get asked all the time as well. Where's the nearest castle? Where can I see a standing stone? Luckily in Old Meldrum, you've got your spoiled for choice of both of those things. Even if it's just, where's good for lunch? There are two, like little local pubs who are always trying to split it between the two local pubs and sending folk over. And likewise, if they've got guests staying, they'll send them over to us and say, did you know there's a distillery in the town? Because we are just like hidden right in the middle of the village. But yeah, no, it is good, definitely. And I always go back to my local guides, the ones that live in the village, because they've always got like really good insider knowledge of like, there's a community cafe, but it's only open on a Wednesday in the church. Go up there because there's good fine pieces or whatever. Cakes if you're not from Aberdeenshire, if you don't know what fine pieces. But yeah, it's nice.
What I love about Glengarry, Cat, is that pretty much everyone's local, or maybe not originally local, but live locally. And sometimes you don't get that, especially kind of in your tourist areas during season. It's a lot of an influx of people who are just there for the summer, who maybe don't know the local area, and it's not not their fault. But I think there's something authentic and original about hearing a local voice doing the tours, who know the area and say, "Oh, you've got to go up to Bertie's bar and have a good pint," or ask him about his time in whiskey or whatever. There's always kind of that local link, and sometimes you lack that in the kind of big commercially operated centres.
Yeah, well, I loved it at Aberfeldy because I used to always joke that everyone that worked in the visitor centre that I didn't go to school with went to school with my dad, because there was quite a lot of that. Like, you know, you had Dorothy that's worked in the visitor centre since the day it opened. Well, you know, I think Dorothy's big sister was in my dad's year at school. Dorothy's eldest son was in my big sister's year, and Dorothy's youngest son was in my year. You know, so like that is it's just lovely, like having those kind of connections. And you know, and I used to always tell the story of, you know, you'll have had this as well, Kat, as people will say, you know, when did you first visit a distillery and all this kind of thing, and I always say, look, I actually don't remember, because my father and grandfather used to buy the draff from Aberfeldy to feed to the cattle, and I don't remember the first time I was taken with them to get the draff. You know, you'd be plonked on the wee seat in the tractor and go along with them and all that kind of thing. So being able to, you know, it goes back to that authenticity that I talked about, was if your tour guide can tell you that oh, I've been coming here since I was 4 and I used to drive past it on the way to school and all that kind of thing, like people are in it. But I mean, that's not to say that someone coming in isn't going to do a good tour as well, but the challenge
I think the tour will probably be as good. It's the add-on, that kind of resellability of the local areas. I think you get that from somebody local. Kat, actually, what was your first distillery tour?
Oh gosh, what was my first one? I think it was I always get Glenmorangie. I never get to pronounce it right. Morangie. It's Morangie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was that. I think it was that one actually. Right, yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting a beer handed to me. So.
I've got a slightly funny story with mine. Mine was mine was Aberfeldy. Obviously, the first tour I ever did was Aberfeldy, and I went along with a mate from school, just on a weekend. We thought we'll go and do the tour and it'll be great. We were 17 at the time, but I was about 6'3", and he was like 6'2". So I'm now 6'6", and I think he's 6'5". So
wow.
No one asked, basically. And, you know, I knew so many of the staff, so they knew I'd finished school, so were coming up to finishing school, so they just kind of were like, well, he'll be 18, that's fine. So we did the tour. Sorry to say, Jonathan, the operations manager, we got a couple of drams at the end. And it was a couple of weeks later, I was at an event with my dad, and we bumped into the woman that had booked us on the tour. And she's asking about what we've been up to recently and all that kind of thing. And Dad goes, well, you know, it's the laddie's 18th in a couple of weeks. And she's like, I'm sorry, what? You're 17. I was like, yeah, sorry, brother, I'm sorry. So, yeah, my first distillery tour was actually underage, which isn't great.
Oh, I know. Like 6'6", though. Like, I would literally be having a conversation with your kneecaps. Like, that's tall.
It's a bit silly. It's a funny thing, though, like, going back to the family history, like, I don't know if you've met Finn in person or just sort of had him on, but Finn's pretty big too. Finn will be like 6'4" or something like that. And like my dad is tall, Finn's dad is tall, and Finn's got a guy that works for him called Reeve, who does a lot of the historic work and does a lot of the content and all that kind of thing. And I remember the first time I met Reeve, it was so funny. Reeve was like, meeting you is like meeting a celebrity, because I know everything about your family, and this is so funny. But he was saying that when you look, we've got so many records and so many really cool things about the family. And one thing that it always mentions in all the family records is just how tall everyone was. So, like, we know that with a Duncan Thomson who died in like the 1850s, something like that. And in his obituary, it says in his prime, he stood at 6'3" and all this kind of thing. So that's 200 years ago. Like, that's a big lad for back then. And it's funny because all of my cousins on my dad's side of the family are all quite short. I say short, they're like normal height, you know. And I remember growing up, I used to always be like, man, why are they all like normal height and I'm massive? And then I started reading all that stuff and I was like, no, they're wrong. Like, you know, they're the weird ones. This is how big we're supposed to be. So no, we're a big family. Finn, unfortunately, he got the hair, but I didn't. But yeah, it's definitely in the genes. Like, my sister's like 6 foot as well, so we're a big old family.
It's weird because my dad was one of 7. He's from New Zealand as well.
Right.
So my family are all over recently. I lost my dad recently, so they all came over for the funeral.
Right.
And my brother, I've got a twin brother who's about 6 foot. So we're all kind of stood, kind of shaking hands with people as they're going into the thing, the crematorium. And it's just like watching a gradually descending kind of wall chart of like average height until we get to me. And like people are just like, what happened to you? Like, you know, because my dad was 6'3" and like his sister, like 1 of 7, they're all just massive.
It's like the printer running out of ink because it's printing, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. And like a lot of people are just kind of looking at me like, who are you anyway? Sort of thing. It's like, let the Oompa Loompa in. Yeah, genes, I guess, isn't it? It's,
where in New Zealand is your family from?
So Dad was born in South Island in Nongata, and then he grew up in the North Island in Rotorua.
All right, okay.
And then they all kind of spread out in the North Island. So,
it's an awesome place. Like, I love it. So Louise is from a town called Balclutha, which is Gaelic for Strathclyde, because it's New Zealand, you know. So it's right down south. It's about an hour south of Dunedin. So it's almost as far south as south goes. But
Dunedin's like little Scotland, isn't it? Is that
it is, yeah. So the streets are all called like Princess Street and all this kind of thing. And it's the most southern statue of Robert Burns in the world is in Dunedin.
He gets about, doesn't he?
Yeah, because there's Robert Burns. He's one of the people that has the most statues in the world, along with Queen Victoria. And yeah, right down in Dunedin, there's a statue of Burns. So whenever we're there, I always make a point of going and visiting it. But what I love about New Zealand is like the whiskey scene there is actually really exciting. It's brand new, but it's really exciting. There's a guy called Michael who owns a business called Whisky Galore. I'm not sure if you've come across them before, but so they're based in Christchurch, and it was a shop initially, still is the shop, but they're now an importer, and they're the biggest, one of the biggest importers in the Southern Hemisphere, and I believe it's the biggest whiskey shop in the Southern Hemisphere that Michael's got down there. So he's Scottish originally, but has moved out there, and he's almost single-handedly created the modern New Zealand whiskey industry. Michael, like he's a very impressive figure. But as you're traveling around the place, you know, there's all these new distilleries popping up. Like there's even just in the South Island, you've got Divergence in Christchurch, you've got Scapegrace, Lake Cromwell, you've got Cadrona, which is obviously the big one near Wanaka. But then up in the north, you've got Waiheke Distillery. You've got the Thomsons north of Auckland. Like there's a really exciting New Zealand whiskey scene emerging. So, you know, we've talked about it in the future is, do we find ourselves in New Zealand at some point, maybe? And you know, I'm sure I'll be able to find a job if there's a big whiskey scene. So yeah, it's quite exciting.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
We have Reb Mordecai. Good evening.
Oh, hi, Reb.
He apologises first and foremost for being late, but he's also said his first distillery tour was in 1990, walking past Open Distillery and decided on a whim to pop in. So he is an advocate of kosher whiskies.
Interesting.
And comes over quite often to kind of visit distilleries and see what they're doing in that, to promote or to support the kosher scene. So I was just asking, he's just replied actually just now. I asked him, was that a watershed moment for you into the whiskey industry? So he's just replied, I was just a casual drinker at the time, introduced to the classic malts of Scotland, ended up buying the whole range and discovered the variety of single malts. So yeah, the reason I asked him was because we've talked about before how important is a visitor centre tour.
Yep.
And so we've got Mordecai here now, famously passionate about all things whiskey, and just on a whim popped into Oban and maybe kind of threw him down the rabbit hole. He skirted around the rabbit hole originally, but that pulled in. So,
We've got Donner Pass Whisky, who's bookmarked your website as well. He's coming back to Scotland in 2 or 3 years, and
sounds good.
He's going to get in contact with you.
Looking
And yes, I am a good time in Islay too. Thank you for. I have overposted on Instagram. I am sorry if you guys follow me. Feel free to stop looking at the pictures. It's all good.
So everybody's getting FOMO.
Well, that's usually me all the time anyway. So yeah, I totally get that. I was going to ask you a question. I can't remember what it was. It'll come back to me. It doesn't matter. But like 80% potato waffle brain, I think. What would your ideal tour look like? A distillery tour? You know, if you were just kind of, if you were trying to explain to somebody like, this is what you're starting out distillery. This is the vision. This is the formula that's going to win people around.
Surely it would be a Glenturret tour led by Alex.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I'd pick and choose a few things from a few different distilleries. One element that I really liked from a tour that I've done a couple of times is I really like the first part of the King's Barns tour. Like the production part. Yeah, like when you go. Well, no, so not that bit, but the bit where they've got the history boards up that explain,
on the wall, yeah.
You know, the King's Barns area and all this kind of thing. I think that's really well interpreted. And you know, production at King's Barns is fairly simple. It's obviously a small distillery all in one room, but that first part of it, and it's the same with a place like Lindor's. I would start with that, I think. And what I think is so important when you're doing the history part of the tour, because every distillery has to start with the history part and why are we here and all that kind of thing, is what I would always say to people is, as much as possible, don't just explain the history, but explain the context. So, you know, Glenlivet nailed this, right? I did Glenlivet recently for the first time, and I can't remember the lassie's name, but she'd only been a tour guide there for 2 weeks, and it was a fantastic tour. She absolutely nailed it. But the way they explain the history is great, because obviously for them it's so important to tell about George IV in 1822 and the Excise Acts in 1823, whereas most distilleries that are started in 1825, 26, 27, whatever, they're just going to say we started in 1825 and then they're going to move on. They're not going to explain the context of why they started in that time. So I used to always say this at Glenturret, you know, with the 1763 date. Well, why is that an interesting time for distilleries? Because it's 18 years after the final Jacobite rebellion. So it's a really interesting time in Scotland where people were trying to show loyalty. And one of the ways you could show loyalty was by making whiskey legally. So that's why you get some distilleries that pop up, and even like Glengarry and stuff like that, because people were trying to show loyalty by making whiskey legally if they were loyal to the Hanoverians. So yeah, I would start with that of properly explained history in context. Honestly, keep production quite brief. Like I'm fascinated by production, but what I think a production tour should be is this is what makes us different, rather than, you know, this is just the same old stuff that you hear at every other distillery. Just what makes you different, I think, is the important thing. Now, I'm obviously coming at that from the point of view of I know how whiskey's made already. So,
yeah. But
that's what I want to hear from a distillery. One of the best tours I've done in the last couple of years was Ballindalloch. I was up with a few pals during. We were up north for Ali Baxter's 30th, and it was all arranged by Tom, who was the brand ambassador at the time, and we pitched up. And the boy said to us, "Listen, I'm really sorry. Like, you've missed the last proper tour of the day. I've got about half an hour and I can do you a quick whip round and get you a couple of drams." We were like, "Honestly, mate, that sounds brilliant. Like, just walk us through and go, those are the washbacks. This is the fermentation time. Right, let's keep moving." You know, that I think would be, what I would want personally. And then for the tasting, like, there doesn't need to be a lot of drams, because ultimately there's a saturation point with that and there's a ceiling to it. But just make sure that the tour guide really knows why the whiskey is the way it is. So if they're saying this is a sherry cask whiskey, what type of sherry is it? How long was it in this? How long was it in that? Arm the tour guides with that information, and that's what's going to get me interested, to be honest. Yeah. And also a distillery cat has to have a distillery cat.
like this one?
That one right there. There you go. So Glengarry, that's my ideal tour. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Do you know what? You actually just
exactly what we
do here.
Yeah. Although they do go a lot into production, but they do it well.
Yeah, we go a lot into production, but we explain why we're different, and that's why we have
to
go into
I said you do it well. I said you do it well.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you about the distillery cats as well, because you've got the famous one, don't you? Towser was from Glenturret.
Towser, yeah. Towser the mouse. So she was there from 19. Oh, I should know this quicker. Was it nine? I think it was 1963 to 1987. Towser was there for 23 years and 11 months, and yeah, the estimate was 28,899 mice killed in her lifetime. So there's a statue of her at the distillery and all that kind of thing. So the current cats are called Glen and Turret. Very inventive. G for Glen, G for Ginger, T for Turret, T for Tabby. That's how you remember which one's which. If you work there, you're either Team Glen or Team Turret. I like Turret, don't get me wrong. He's a sweet cat. Glen's my boy. I miss Glen every day now that I don't work there anymore. Glen's just like this big, dopey ginger cat that just wants to sleep, basically. But he's such a sweetheart. So I actually had I had a cat bed on my desk, and that was where Glen would spend about 80% of his time, was just to sleep on my desk. So, it was great. Like, if you're ever having a tough day, you're just like, I'm just going to shut the laptop for 5 minutes and I'm just going to gee Glen a wee bosey and then back to work, But I have my own cat for when I'm working from home now, which is quite nice. But it's a really fun little aspect of the distillery. And, they derail every tour because you'd be halfway through a tour and you'd be talking about esterification, and then Turret would just sort of walk in and you'd see people like, you haven't explained it yet. By that point, you're going, right, we're going to pause fermentation here and we're going to talk about the cat. Okay. And then we'll come back to fermentation, because there's no point trying to continue talking about fermentation when everybody's looking at a cat, So, but it made the tours fun and approachable. And I used to like to, if one of them appeared while I was doing the tour, I used to always pick them up, and I'd be holding Turret like a baby, because that's how he likes to be held, and I would just carry on with my tour. So I'd be standing in the still house talking about reflux with this arm while I've got a cat held in this arm, and he's just like that, sitting on my shoulder, just hanging out. So it brings personality to it, which is really nice. So no, they're sweet lads, Glen and Turret.
I'm glad you said
two cats, don't they?
They do, yes. I can't remember their names.
Vesper and John. It's not named after like the monk or something.
John Carr.
Yeah, they've got their own Instagram.
Yes, they do. Yeah, because they were on that Netflix show about cats with jobs.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. About time you get your pet working, they just like freeload the whole time.
I know.
No.
I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned about Glen, the distillery cat that spends most of her time sleeping at the desk, because I know another cat who could be accused of.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
I'll remember that next time you message 5 minutes from the distillery. Can we get a case each of Founders and 12?
Yeah.
No.
No, I'm sleeping.
You're busy sleeping.
I'm sleeping, sorry, yeah.
We've got Callum, Glen Scotia. Superfan is asking the usual Callum question. For Alex, what is your favourite distillery from each of the 5 regions? The Highland, Lowland, Speyside, Campbellton, and Islay.
So I'm gonna approach this as favourite whiskey, but also favourite visitor experience, because that's obviously what I look at mostly. For the Lowlands, it's the same answer for both. It's Lindors. Lindors is just one of my favourite whiskies all around. I think the sherry cask, the edition, which I've always got a bottle of, the STR stuff is so good. And then just as a distillery experience, they're a really, really great team. I think what Drew and Helen set up there is really impressive. And, I know a lot of the team quite well. So like John, Murray, Elliot, like they're just all really good people. I've got a real soft spot for Lindors. Highland is difficult because I should say Glenturret or Aberfeldy, shouldn't I? I think Aberfeldy is one of the best visitor experiences you can do. And it's so underrated as a visitor experience, because they've got that history with Dewars. The first maybe third of the tour is focused on the museum and the Dewars history. And then you go into the distillery. And now the distillery is, it's a distillery that was owned by Diageo up until the 90s. So it looks like a lot of other distilleries around the country. But then they've just opened a really cool new warehouse experience at Aberfeldy, which I would highly recommend, because the warehouses there have been inactive for 30 odd years, something like that. So they've put loads of effort into the tasting rooms there, and they've got this whole thing with these big screens where, Stephanie McLeod walks in and talks to you about her blending process. So I think as a visitor experience, Aberfeldy is like well up there, not just in the Highlands, just in general. Favorite whiskey from the Highlands is probably Glencadam. Like, I love Glencadam. I don't think I've ever had a bad one. The PX Reserva in particular is a real favorite of mine. Speyside, where do you even start? I have had some amazing tours at Glenfarclas. I was up there recently. We had an incredible tour. It was Debs that took us around. I don't know if you've come across her before. It's one of I think she's European sales. She took us around. Just what I love about Glenfarclas as a visitor experience and as a brand in general is the casual way they approach their liquid. So, you look at Distillers 101, everyone else is designing like the Bowmore stack and the Lafroig capsule and all this kind of thing. So what did Glenfarclas do? They released a 60-year-old Glenfarclas, 4 litres of it, and it was the same bottle design. It's just that it was 4 litres. Like, I love that. Just understated excellence like that. And, we were at the distillery. She's pulling out 1994, which is my birth year, and 1981 and 1962 vintages, and just there you go, have some of that. Great. What would be a favorite Speyside whiskey? Cragganmore. Really like Cragganmore. Very underrated dram. Really just the standard Cragganmore is just brilliant. To my eternal shame, having worked in this industry since I was 18, I've never been to Islay. And I'm very, very ashamed of that. I'm potentially going to do that for my stag do next year. So I'll hopefully rectify that.
There's not a lot of history to go to Islay for, is there, Alex?
No, I mean, it's not like there was the Lords of the Isles.
There's no history. You've got no reason
all that nonsense, see Ali Heather's Instagram for more information.
There's nothing happening here at all. Board stuff.
I know, terrible. My first ever favourite whiskey was Bowmore 12-year-old. I remember trying that as an 18-year-old in the pub in the village that I grew up in, and I just was blown away by it. But I think it's probably been supplanted these days by Lagavulin 16. It's such a special whiskey. It's one of the few distilleries, I think, where the standard release is the best thing they do. All the limited releases are cool, and the 8 and the 12 are all really cool and everything, but the 16 is just a great whiskey. And then, I mean, how do you pick Campbelltown? Springbank is a really cool tour because everything is so authentic. Yeah. But I think as a whiskey, I prefer Glen Scotia. I think it would be my favorite.
There's only one right answer when Callum asked you that question. Glen Scotia.
I hadn't even thought about the fact that it was Callum asked it as well. I love Glen Scotia. Like, I was working at the Scotch Whisky Experience when Glen Scotia signed up to the Scotch Whisky Experience. They were the first and so far only Campbelltown to sign up. And I remember how exciting it was. Like, I can lay claim to being the first person to ever buy a Campbelltown whiskey at the Scotch Whisky Experience. I bought the first bottle of Glen Scotia. I had no knowledge of Campbelltown at all at that point. So I at that point it was the double cask, the 15, the Victoriana were the range at that point. And yeah, I've loved everything that I've had from Glen Scotia. I think it's a really cool distillery. But yeah, as a visitor experience, I think Springbank, seeing the malt floors, and when I was there with Ali last week, we even got a wee tour of the new bottling facility and all that kind of thing. So
they opened it up for the festival, didn't they?
Yes, yeah. So it's an incredibly impressive place. Yeah, I think I covered all 5 of them, didn't I? Yeah.
Lowlands. Did we do Lowlands?
Aye, Lindors.
Oh yeah, we started with Lowlands. That's right.
Yeah.
So long ago, Cathy.
As Ali said. Well, I think they're so separate, as Ali said earlier. What was it he said? That hopefully I don't charge people by the hour because of all the havering that I do. I'm not very good at being concise, as you can probably tell. But I think that there are distilleries where I've hated the tour but loved the whiskey. So I think it's quite important to separate those.
Have you ever fallen in love with a whiskey through a bar or through a bottle, went to a distillery, and then actually been put off it to the extent you're like, you know what, I don't want to touch that whiskey anymore?
That's an interesting thought. The honest answer probably is no. To be honest, like where I have had a bad tour, I've never let it affect my view of the brand, because I've probably done bad tours before. Like, bad tours happen. If it's a case that I don't like the brand message, that's very different. There are brands that I like the liquid, but I don't like the brand, and I don't like the brand identity and all that. So that would put me off buying it, because ultimately, we talk about this a lot with Gen Z, especially. I'm a millennial, but we talk about this a lot with that demographic of they're only going to buy things like whiskey if they feel like it's a positive brand that they can associate, good things with. So if I don't like a brand, then I won't buy their whiskey, even if I do like the liquid. Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Good stuff. The reason I ask that is we've talked a lot about how important a good tour or a good experience is in making you fall in love with a whiskey. And with 150 odd distilleries on the go, how do you pick one, or how do you pick two to be your favourite? Just wondering if we could flip that in reverse and say, does it work the other way? And I think you probably agree with it's less impactful the other way, as long as the liquid is good.
I think if you can see that actually, no, this is a sensible brand, this is a good brand, but that's maybe just not the best tour guide. Like, I did a tour once, and this wasn't a bad tour. It was just this boy was new. I did a tour once at Bletheren, and I felt so bad for the boy, because there was only 4 of us on the tour, and it was myself, Ali Baxter, Ian Robertson, who's head of production at Dalmore, and he was Rassie's first distiller when they first started up. So we were all tour guides together at the Scotch Whisky Experience back in the day. And then the 4th person on the tour was a local chef from Pitlochry. And this was this guy's, like, I think it was his 2nd ever tour that he'd done. And he said to us right at the start of the tour, "Oh, I'm super new and everything." So we were like, right, well, we're not going to ask any questions. It's fine. Like, we're not going to put the pressure on him. This chef guy asked him every single question under the sun. And I felt so bad for the lad, because he just didn't know. But what it ended up being was he did the right thing in that scenario, where he realized who else was on his tour. So he's getting asked things about, well, what was the whiskey scene like in Perthshire in the late 18th century when Blair Athol started? Why is he going to know that? He's worked there for 2 weeks. But he basically just turned to us and went, "Do any of you know that answer?" So I was like, I do actually. So I talked, right, yeah, settle in, son, you're gonna learn something.
Hold my pint.
we get to the still house, and the boy starts asking him about specific boiling points and esterification and copper degradation and all that kind of stuff. So we're just like, right, Ian, you teach this boy. And I felt so bad for the lad, but ultimately he probably got a lot out of that. He probably learned a lot from being in that experience. And I spoke to him afterwards, and I was like, look, you were doing a really good tour. It's just that guy was being very, very difficult. But yeah, like I have had bad tours before, but I won't name any names.
That young lad's walking away thinking, I hope every tour is like that.
Yeah.
I've got 3 stalwarts of the industry to help me along.
Yeah. I had a good one. I was at King's Barnes a while ago, and there was a German group on the tour, and they were asking a lot of questions. And we got up to the tasting area, and the tour guide says, this is I think it was the Ducat release. And he says, oh, this is sherry cask finish and all that kind of thing. And one of the guys goes, what type of sherry? And he says, oh, I think it was Oloroso. And the guy goes, in your opinion, how do different sherries affect the flavour? And the guy's like, no idea. Now, I love sherry. I'm a big fortified wine fan. I like sherry, Madeira, port. I think they're all brilliant. And I'm sitting there, and I was like, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to go, well, I know that actually. But he said, look, I don't know the answer to that. Does anyone in the group know anything about sherry? And I was just like, tag me in, coach. I've got this one. So it's just like, right, now we're going to talk about sherry. So yeah, you can do that in a good way of not knowing the answer and carrying on the tour still. But yeah, I wouldn't say either of those were bad.
I think sometimes though, when you find out, like you've done a tour and somebody comes up to you and says, that was really good, I'm the master distiller from such and such, and that was really interesting, and then you're like, holy fuck. But I'm like, I'm glad you didn't tell me that before the tour, because you'd constantly like judging yourself, thinking, is this actually right? But
yeah,
my second ever tour was a minibus full of chemical engineering students and their lecturer. I was like, I'm never doing this job again. Like, this is horrific.
No pressure at all.
I remember we had Stuart Buchanan on the Blether. That was Russell, our former host. Had him in a 1-to-1, and so Stuart Buchanan's kind of probably more famous brother, not in our scene, is Gordon Buchanan, a nature photographist and documentary producer. And Russell asked Stuart, where when you get this intensity of kind of questioning as a tour guide, how do you handle it? Or how does it compare to what Gordon does? I can't remember the exact question, but Stuart's reply was, I would rather be in the Arctic being faced down by a polar bear like Gordon than being at a whiskey festival facing down some German whiskey enthusiasts. Because some of the questions you get asked, you're just like, I have no, why would I know that? Let alone, why do you need to know that?
Two of the most ridiculous situations I've ever been in my career, right? Where I spent a very brief period after uni running the stadium tour at Murrayfield. So I'm a huge rugby fan. I used to play and everything. So like that was such a cool job. Like it was really, really cool. I did that before moving up and working at Aberfeldy. And I'd been there maybe a couple of weeks, something like that. And I was doing a tour and I was told it's a corporate event that's taking place at the stadium. And there's a leadership speaker in, and the leadership speaker is going to come with you on the tour. So I get down and I pick them up from the Thistle suite and, take them down to the trophy room. There weren't many trophies at that time. And we're sort of stood there and I'm looking around the group and I just suddenly made eye contact with the guy at the back who was the leadership consultant. And it was David Soul. Now, that name won't mean something to everybody, but this last time Scotland won a title in what was then the Five Nations, is now the Six Nations, was 1990. Last time we won a Grand Slam was 1990. And he was the captain. And there's a really iconic shot where normally the teams will run out the tunnel, right, onto the pitch and everything. But David Soul said to the team before they went out, we are not running, we're walking out. Now, huge game, Scotland-England, last game of the tournament. Whichever team won the game was going to win the title. It's a huge game. And it's this iconic shot of David Soul leading the team out. And it's this slow walk down the tunnel. And loads of the England players have talked about it ever since and said that as soon as that happened, they all thought, we're not winning this. Like, look at the intensity that those boys have. And certain people talk about him as this amazing leader. So he's on my tour. So I'm having to talk about, the point of view of a Scotland player and all that kind of thing. Now, I've never played for Scotland. And I'm like, so in the lead up to the game, the captain will say this. Isn't that right, David? And sort of look at him and he's like, yeah. And I just kept catching myself and I kept being like, leave him alone. Don't make this about him. But that's like you're saying, Kat, of like having distillers and all this kind of thing on your tour. I was like, how do I not make this about David Soul? And then the other one, which is just a really stupid story, was this goes back to the authenticity and not making it up thing. Working at Blair Castle as a teenager, was doing a tour for a German group. So I was doing the tour in English, and then there was a translator translating it into German. So I started the tour, and I said, good morning, welcome to Blair Castle. My name's Alex, I'll be your tour guide. And the tour guide translated that, but he added an extra thing on to the end. He said, Alex ist der unerhörliche Sohn von Herzog. Now, Sohn von Herzog means son of the Duke. And I understood that because I can understand a fair bit of German. And I was suddenly sort of stopped and looked at him, and the panic in his eyes when he'd seen I'd understood that. Then I went and found a colleague later, and I said, "What does Unaharike mean? I've never heard this word before." And she goes, "Oh, what would it be? I guess bastard would be the English translation." So this guy has just told his group of 30 Germans that they're getting a tour from the bastard son of the Duke of Atholl. So they're obviously going to believe that. And I mean, the mad thing was that there was a painting in the castle that people used to tell me I looked like all the time. So they just kept the story going. Yeah, I'm the bastard of Atholl, you know. But like, I was so tempted to just go, "Sorry, what did you just say?" and just completely ruin it. But I was like, no, I'm gonna let him have his little moment, you know.
That's so funny.
Maybe
It's
I
when
love
you know
that.
the
They're still
translator.
telling us.
Yeah.
I know.
They're still
Just
telling
so,
that story today.
was he
Oh,
just
we've got
doing
this
that because he just thought it was going to make things more fun for the group, like, or he just
100%.
kind of thinking,
Yeah. He's thinking this is going to make this so much more authentic. We're getting a tour from the Duke's bastard son. Like, this is going to be absolutely brilliant. I told the Duke that story once. He thought it was very funny, and then asked me what my mother was called again. It's like, no, not doing that, Bruce. No, not at all. But yeah, that's where the authenticity comes back to it, you know.
yeah, it's funny because if you do know some of the language, like I can understand more German than I can speak German. And sometimes if somebody's, they don't, German translators are not often required because Germans have got such good English.
Yes.
But sometimes you'll kind of do your bit, then you'll listen to them translating it. And you're like, I haven't even got to that bit yet. Like, we're not even done that room. They're like, oh, sorry, I just was skipping ahead a little bit for you. I'm like, no, if you're going to translate, please translate what I'm saying. Don't just.
I mean, I've had it where all I've said is like, you know, "Good morning, welcome to Glenturret. My name's Alex." They've talked for half an hour, and I've heard them say William Wallace. I'm like, where the hell did you get that from? You know, he'd been dead 500 years before this place started up. Like, what are you talking about, mate? Like, yeah, it's pretty wild sometimes. That's the funny thing about it is, you know, we all make sure our tour guides stick to brand message, and then we bring these people in that don't work for the brand, and they say whatever.
Say anything. Yeah, you just get the word of haggis, tartan. You're like, oh no, we're not talking about any of that.
I was talking about mashing, like. Yeah.
Oh, no, it's good. How are we keeping up with questions, actually? Is this just all chat with each other now? We haven't missed any questions, have we?
I was going to say, like Donna Bass said, "Oh, funny, I was thinking the actor David Soul, who was on telly in the late 1970s. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying, I don't even know who that is. Apparently, you were talking about The Last Kingdom earlier. One of the actors is going around the island just now. My mate was in the pub with him last night.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he showed me a picture of him. I don't recognise him, but yeah, there you go. Just
the main guy is Alexander something.
No, because I have watched it, but I think it was like maybe, I don't know. I can't remember now, but he was very excited. He was also very drunk when he was telling me. But yeah, I haven't seen him.
Is he one of these guys that's, you think you see a celebrity and you get a selfie with them and stuff, and then like 2 days later you look at your phone and you're like, actually looks nothing like who I thought it was.
Who is that weirder?
Bought him a drink and everything.
No, I was in the pub once in Edinburgh, surprisingly, and I was looking at this guy across the bar, and I kept thinking, I know him from somewhere. I can't think where, and it was really, really bugging me. And it was only later that I realised that it was Chris Evans. It was Captain America, because it was when they were filming the Avengers in Edinburgh. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, did I go to school with him? Like, who is he? And I was like, oh yeah, Captain America. Never mind. Yeah.
But
I didn't go up to him and go.
Instantly went TFI Friday.
Yes.
I went there. That's an age thing.
Yes, the slightly better looking Chris Evans. Yeah.
There's people filming up in Aberdeenshire for the remake of
Highlander.
What's the film? Highlander. Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's Henry Cavill, isn't it?
Yes, him and Karen Gillan.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they used Gillan Donnan again, didn't they?
Odyssey, weren't they?
Yeah. I've never seen the whole of that film. It's absolutely mental. I think it's one of those ones like a cult classic type vibe, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
One of those just odd ones that you're like, why are we watching this? You're like, because it's cool. You have to watch it.
Like my favourite thing about it is the only actual Scottish actor in it is Sean Connery, but he's playing a Spaniard. Incredible. Absolutely fantastic. 10 out of 10, no notes.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey,
But
Sean Connery was famous for his
that's a rite of
accent.
passage. Watching Highlander from start to finish is you just have to.
I'll need to watch it back maybe.
Don't worry about the sequels, just the original.
Do you know, it's funny, like, because having a partner who's not from Scotland, although Louise's mum is Scottish, there's so many of these things that I've got to experience again for the first time when showing her, and one of them was Train Spotting. Now, I love the original Train Spotting. I think it's an incredible film, and it was very of its time, obviously, and then. Yeah. The second one, I think, it's totally different tone. The second one, but it's such a good movie. I actually, luckily enough, very cheekily got to go to the premiere of the second one, which was so cool, just through a connection in Edinburgh. But Louise, my fiance, is quite squeamish when it comes to films and just anything in general. And she's just a very nice, very, very gentle person. So we're watching Trainspotting, and I looked over her, and she's like, and I was like, "You're not enjoying this, aren't you?" And she was like, "No, it's horrible." And then, spoiler alert ahead for people that haven't seen Trainspotting, that was before the baby died, that she was already thinking that. Yeah. So I was like, right, I'm going to turn it off. And she was like, "Does anything else really bad happen?" I was like, "Yeah, well, I mean, the baby dies and everything." She's like, I'm never watching that again. Wow. So I was like, I'm showing her all these incredible Scottish things. And I was like, yeah, some of them are a bit grim, though, to be fair. So we'll ignore that one.
Yeah, yeah.
I've never actually seen it. It's really bad. I've never actually seen it. I've not watched that many.
The other one I've watched, I don't know if you remember, James McAvoy was in the film. I think it was called Filth.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's Irvin Welsh as well.
Yeah. I watched that with a hangover, and that was the most intense mind fuck I think I've ever been through. I was sweating during that.
You need to be in a very good mental space to watch Filth. Like, it's hard watch. Yeah.
I need to watch it again. Like, completely.
I have to add these to my list of films I've never seen. I'm aware we've nearly had you for 2 hours there, Alex. I was just looking at the time thinking, what time do we start? Because that can't actually be like 2 hours, but it really is. Like,
yeah, it's mental.
That's insane. So interesting to talk to you, and I kind of like we could get you back on the next year and still have loads more to talk about.
No, it's been great to be here.
Yeah, we're so really excited to see how your business goes as well. And I think you've probably got a few follows on tonight off the back of that as well. But
hope so.
Yeah, we'll get you back. Get you back on.
Yeah,
if you're up north, come up and see us as well.
Absolutely. I've not been to Glengarry, so I need to do that. And I know so many people in the industry who list it as their favorite distillery. Like folk like Chris Coates talk about it so often. Obviously after his incredible reel as well, which went very viral. Moment. Yes, and even like I was listening to another podcast today with Finn, and he mentioned Glengarry, and him and all the hosts were like, "God, isn't it a great whiskey?" So it really feels like it's having quite a cool moment in the industry at the moment.
I think it's a lot of people's underrated whiskey, isn't it? It's that kind of hidden gem. For us in the Northeast, Kat's probably have a different opinion. I like to keep it as a hidden gem. I think people should come here and discover it.
No, I need punters.
That's like, I want to sell it, get it everywhere.
Oh, listen, we used to say this all the time at Glenturret. We'd have that conversation all the time as people would say, "You're such a hidden gem." And we're like, "Can you try and make us not? Can you go and tell everyone about us, please? Because we don't want to be a hidden gem."
I know.
Yeah, and then
one of our
no, on you go.
I was going to say one of our sort of brand USP taglines for a while was the road less travelled. I'm like, yeah, but you're going to have to put people down that road now and again. We need them down that road.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say was there's a couple of things that I'm working on that I'm hopefully going to be launching in the next few months that are more tour experiential stuff that I'm hopefully going to be doing as a regular thing surrounding whiskey history. So yeah, once I get those put together, you guys need to come down for a couple of days and
100%, cool.
Do some tours for you and get you some nice Perthshire whiskey.
Yeah. We'd love that. Yeah, definitely. It's been such a pleasure talking to you, Alex. And yeah, that 2 hours has gone flying by, which is always a really good sign of a good blether. A proper blether is what a blether should be.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you definitely got the memo on that one. It's been good. and there's been some good chat as well. So hopefully you've got some followers and you'll come back and see us sometime soon.
Next time we chat,
Thank you,
hopefully it's in person, face to face, maybe over a real
Yeah, absolutely.
And get yourself over to Islay. Just tag along with Ali. He just gets jetted around the world.
Well, that's it. I kind of just want to be his bag holder. It's you know, I'll do it. I'm not a proud man. I'll do it. You know, it's fine. Yeah,
definitely.
Love it. Thank you so much, Alex.
Right. Cheers,
I'm
guys.
going to let you get back to the spoils of Islay, I guess, and enjoy.
Yes,
How long
I've
are you
got
there?
all my
What have you got left to do?
We're here just Saturday, so off to Bunnahabhain tomorrow, and probably pop into Buchlading, maybe catch up with Adam, and yeah, maybe just a sort of detox after that for a little bit potentially, and then leaving Saturday afternoon. So we'll probably get over to Ardbeg in the morning for their open day just before we head off. So it's been good. It's been awesome. It's been exactly what's needed. But sharing a house with people, and then they're all in different parts of the house, just avoiding the shrooms. I better let them all back in soon.
No worries. Thank you so much. Cheers, Alex. We'll speak soon. Guys, thank you once again for joining us. We will catch you all again very soon, I'm sure. And we'll be in touch soon with next week's guest. And,
I know who's next week guest is. We've got the distillery manager from Moffat Distillery next week.
Oh, cool.
Superb.
Yes.
That will be great.
So
yeah,
we'll
come along next week. And we'll be talking Moffat whiskey.
Yes.
Good night, guys. All the best.
Cheers, guys. Bye.